Teams calls as well. Lovely to see all of you. I'm here to talk about the Get Ready for Computer Science aspect of what Academic Camp and Academic Summer can offer. I personally, in terms of my experience, have been doing this for quite a few years now, and it's, I think, similar to Francisco, it's always good to see happy students, happy parents and happy agents, and certainly that's what we can claim to offer at the end of the 2-week course. So in general, the program is about problem solving. I think a lot of people sort of take a bit of a step back when I say that's what computer science is really about. But in terms of the lifelong skills that people will get as a result of doing this course, the ability to problem solve is the main one. And yes, there will be computers involved. It's hard to get away from them in this day and age, unless my Windows just got very funny. I think we all might be somehow talking and discussing this over a computer. So it's very difficult to escape from them. Students are going to be encouraged to explore that hidden world of computers around them. There's also some ethical concerns about that. Why are computers so prevalent in our day and age? What are we giving up in order for the convenience of having them? So it's not just about writing programs, making code and getting to grips with the computers. It's also understanding how that's going to impact on our lives. A lot of the students we see nowadays are what you would call digital natives. They've never not had the internet kind of knocking around in the background. And that actually wires your brain slightly differently. It's really fascinating having conversations with them and getting them to have conversations with each other about these sort of interesting concerns. So that is some of the things we will be looking at during the Get Ready to Computer Science course. We do, of course, talk about hardware, software, and things in between. So some students will come to us with a fairly good grip of how computers work. They might have their own computer. They might have some experience of taking them apart and leaving all the pieces all over the place, but some students won't. And it's really important to get everybody on the same page. So we spend a lot of the early time making sure that we're all talking with the same language, all using the same terms to get to grips with those, so then we can jump off from that base and kind of really get the ball rolling over the next part of the 2 weeks. So by the end of the course, as it says here, students will be much more comfortable producing fully fledged pieces of computer code. Now, that can be in several different arenas. We have had students work with robots before, we have had students make fully fledged websites before, and then we have had them work in terminal programs. So if you're interested in, say, a career in data science, that's a really useful thing to be able to do. It's the sort of big black screen with lots of green text on it that looks a bit like magic to everybody else. But by the end of the 2 weeks, it tends to be really demystified for these students, and they feel much more comfortable interacting with them. I get to do my Chris Whitty now, Betty, if you could do next slide, please. Thank you very much. So in terms of how students really benefit from this course, like I said, it's about problem solving. If you want to knock down a wall, you do it brick by brick by brick. And then one day you wake up and there's just a pile of bricks and no wall whatsoever. It's the same with any problem you put your mind to. And once students start to click with that, you really see massive, massive progress. It's one of those lifelong skills that once you've learnt it, unfortunately for them, you can't unlearn it. And they're going to get very good at dealing with problems. And they're going to start dealing with bigger and bigger problems and taking on the world and sort of getting out from under the rest of us. So in terms of what we do, we introduce students to these concepts with a lot of real world examples. We say, you know, how did you get here this morning? How did you decide what to have for breakfast? How did you manage to get in and out of the shower without falling down? You solve these sort of basic problems, and then you take from that how you would do it in terms of a computer program, how you would model that onto something much more complicated, say, such as maybe an A&E. You've got an accident and emergency department, and you need to know how people flow through that in order to be able to build an appropriate computer system. So big problems get broken down to smaller and smaller problems, and we are offering children those skills in order to be able to do that. By the end of the 2 weeks, they end up having worked on quite a few different projects. And I think it's really important to say here, this isn't just for students who've already got experience with computers. You can come into this having never even read a piece of code in your life, and we make sure that we're supporting students all the way from the get-go. There's in fact 4 different programming languages that students tend to be exposed to over the course of the week, but there are also a lot of tools available to us that make, instead of having to write complex pieces of code, you work with a much more visual way of doing things. So you're working with the same concepts, you're still getting the same benefits that the other students are getting, but you're not having to get bogged down in punctuation marks and things like that. And students that work well with this find it really, really beneficial. And by the end of the 2 weeks, you do end up with a portfolio of work that you've done. You can point to it and say, actually, this time 2 weeks ago, I didn't have a website, and now I've got an incredible sort of about me thing. And maybe it's located on my computer, but maybe I'm perfectly comfortable with now uploading that to the internet and showing off some of the portfolio of things I've been doing. A lot of students come to us wanting to make video games, and I can't necessarily say we'll be able to make a fully fledged AAA, make loads of money video game by the end of it, but the concepts are the same. And there are going to be smaller video games that students have been very, very proud of, and actually I, embarrassing enough, can't beat. So I think that's a pretty good outcome. If they build a program that I then can't get my way around, I'm pretty proud of them for having managed that. I think we've got here an example timetable. This would have been from, yes, this is, I think we did this last year as well. So you can see it again, it's another fairly fully packed schedule. You've got that sort of behind the scenes thing going through, that's the theme going through week 1. There's a lot of concepts, a lot of terminology to get through, but again, it's introduced in a way that students find relatively easy to get on board with. It's a lot of, let's see how this relates to our lives, and let's see how this affects our day-to-day living. And that really seems to tie it together for a lot of the students. And then in week 2, once everybody's kind of on that level, that's when you can really kind of get the ball rolling and start making websites. You get to work on a student selected project, which a lot of the time the kids are so brimming with ideas that you almost have to say, well, we've only got, you know, a week and a bit left. But this enthusiasm is great. And I want to give you the tools, give you the skills that you can then kind of push on and keep going with that. And that's one of the really great things that comes out of the Get Ready for Computer Science Week. Students come back enthused and kind of ready to move on to the next steps. And yeah, don't get in their way is basically what we kind of say once they come out of it. Yeah, if there are any particular questions on that, I think I'm happy to take those at the end, but that's more or less it from me.